Hi everyone! Today I'm going to be making a traditional Maltese Easter treat. Since we are approaching Easter, I usually like to make this and give this out to my family as a gift. So I'll be making an Easter character, which is a figolla in Malta. So what it is, it's a nice outer base, which is a cookie, and then the inside, it's usually almonds mixed with some other ingredients that are traditional in Malta. I'll be using a mixed blend of nuts. I like to upgrade the items I use just to give that quality flavor. But normally when you go to the bakeries in Malta or here, I'm in Canada, we usually have almonds in the middle. But I like to make a mixed blend, which is usually some nice almonds, pecans, walnuts. So it upgrades the quality of what I'm making. So I'm going to be making this recipe in 3 stages. I'm going to create the outer base, which is the cookie dough. Then I'm going to be creating the inside, which is the filling. And then once they are baked and let them cool down, I'm going to be creating a nice outer decoration. Many people use icing sugar. I'll be using a mixture of colorful chocolates as well. I have some nice, like a little Easter egg, just to finish it off as a nice decoration. That is a traditional way the figolla is made. So let's get started. I have melted my butter, and then I'm going to be adding in my flour. I want to get a nice flaky texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first mix my butter. This recipe calls for margarine. I prefer to use butter. I feel like it's a better choice. It's more authentic than the margarine. So I'm using a butter. So we're just going to continue mixing this until we can get a nice flaky texture with the 2 ingredients that I've put in so far. Once this is complete, I will add in my next ingredients. I decided to get a larger bowl so that it allows me to mix my ingredients a little better. It gives us more room, and then it makes sure that we have fully mixed all of these ingredients. I felt that the bottom wasn't getting the mixture that it should. So I'm just going to transport it into a larger bowl. Alright, so there we go. So we have now the butter with the flour. It's nice and crumbly, and it's also flaky, so we can use our hands as well to make sure it's a nice mix. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to be adding in our sugar. I've decided to use monk sugar this time. I usually use a Splenda. So I just started getting into sugars that are a little different. So I've also used cane sugar, which I enjoy. I'll be using the monk sugar within this recipe. All right, so we're gonna add our sugar. And then I'm gonna be adding in my egg yolks. And then I have some lemon ring, which I'm gonna be chopping that up into smaller pieces. And then I'm just gonna put it inside of the dough. It gives a nice pickup in this recipe with the zest. Now you can add a little bit more if you'd like. I just took 1 ring of the lemon zest. You can also grate it if you choose. I just cut it up into chunks. It will dissolve when it bakes. So I'm just going to mix that nicely in the dough itself. And again, I'm going to be adding the monk sugar and the eggs. I'm going to mix in the ingredients, and then once I have that complete, I'm going to set it aside, and we're going to go on to making the filling for this recipe. I've been kneading my pastry dough for about 5 minutes. It does take time because it is quite flaky, so you want to make sure you can break down all the ingredients that was put into the dough and making sure that you can mold it. So now it has that nice moist texture, but it also has that flakiness to it. You want to try your best to just keep to the ingredients that we put inside. You don't want to add any water, just to make sure that the dough comes together, because I found I've done that in the past, and instead of a cookie texture, it turned into more of a dough, which I wasn't pleased with. So try to stick with the ingredients that we put in. It just takes a little bit longer to break it down to make sure that you can make that dough texture. So we're going to set this aside now, and we're going to go on to making our filling for this recipe. So I have a nice clean bowl, and I'm going to be breaking down some of my ingredients. So I have some monk sugar, some orange peel, I have some egg whites, I have some rose water. You can also use orange blossom water. And then I have some nice mixed nuts, which traditionally this recipe calls for almonds. I'm going to be using a mixture of these nuts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend my mixed nuts in a blender. You can use a food processor as well, so that we can break down the whole nuts themselves into more of a crumble. All right, so I'm just going to be using my blender. And I'm going to do a bit at a time. I'm going to leave some of the pieces a little bit bigger than others, just because it's nice to have that mixture. So we're going to do bit by bit with our mixed nuts. And then once I have them all broken down, we're going to add in the other ingredients that we have available, and I'm going to be showing you how that's done. Now that all my mixed nuts have been broken down into a crumble, there is a few large pieces, which is fine, because when we're baking that, it will break down again, and it's nice to have a little bit of a mixture of textures within the filling. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to be adding in my orange peel. You could also use candied orange, which you can get from your either local bulk barn or anywhere that sells that type of ingredient. Unfortunately, I don't have any, so I always use orange peel. I think it works just as nice. So what I do is I just cut it up into little pieces. Instead of grating it, I like a little bit more of a larger texture in this recipe. So I just break this down. It adds a nice flavor to this ingredients. So I'm going to continue adding in my orange peel. And then once this is complete, I'm going to add about a handful of the orange peel. I'm going to chop it all up. And once I'm complete that, I'm going to be adding in my monk sugar, my egg whites, and my rose water, which again, you can use an orange blossom. Now that I have my filling complete, I added in the sugar that I showed you, as well with the egg whites and the rose water, and then I mixed all the ingredients together, and now it's a nice wet texture with full of flavor, with chunks of orange and nuts, and now it's ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rest these two aside for a while, and then when I'm ready to use them, I'm going to show you step by step on how we're going to put it all together. We have our dough nicely made, the filling, and then what I've also done is I have my chocolates. So once they're finished baked, we have our nice colorful Easter colors that we're going to be decorating our figollas with. So there we go. We have some nice colorful chocolates. And then as well, with the figolla, the way it works is we make characters. So we can either make an egg, a bunny rabbit. Sometimes I've seen little cars for the kids. So it's up to you, and I'm going to show you what I will choose this year. and how we're going to be putting it all together. Now that my dough has been sitting for a while, I let it sit for about an hour. So I have selected the character that I'll be doing this year, and it's going to be a bunny rabbit. So normally I do eggs because they're very simple, just round, easy, but this year I'm hoping to get a little bit more creative. So I drew out a stencil of a rabbit, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be now rolling out my dough on a flat surface and getting it a nice thin layer of the dough. And once I have that done, then I'll be able to cut out the stencil of the bunny. So I'll need 2 for each figolla, and I will show you what the next step after that is done. So let's get started with rolling out our dough. I have a nice clean surface that I've cleaned off, and I'm gonna put some flour down so that our dough doesn't stick to the surface. So we're just gonna layer it with some flour, and then we're gonna grab a bit of dough to start off. So we're gonna knead it a little bit before we roll it out. It has a bit of a crumble still, so we wanna make sure we can get a nice firm texture. So once I have my dough ready, I'm going to show you the cutout and how we're going to fill them. So I have broken down my dough into portions that will create 6 figollas. So I have made them into balls, which I found it was a lot easier than when trying to mix the whole batter of this dough. I find when you put them individually, it allows the butter to mix in better and it allows it to mold. So I've broken it down again into portions for 6 of the figollis that I'm going to be making. And then I have my stencil that I created, and then I rolled out one portion to see if it was a good size that would fit the stencil that I've created. I did have to trim it down a little bit just to fit the portion of the dough. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my stencil, and I'm going to set this piece of dough aside. I'm going to continue to do it to all of my portions. I might have a little bit of dough extra, so I might just make, some smaller versions of what I'm making here, just as some bonus pieces. But I'm just going to cut out the stencil now. So I'm going to make sure that it has full coverage of the dough. I'm going to cut out the portion that I need. And then once I complete all my pieces, I'll show you the next step in this recipe. About a half an hour to 45 minutes rolling my dough out and shaping all of my tops and bottoms for my figolli. So I was able to get 1 extra figolli dough after rolling out the amount that I really wanted. And then what I've done is I've separated the filling so that there's a good balance, that each figolla will have the same amount of filling. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take off my top layer. You want to be careful because the dough is a bit flaky. So you take that off, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my dough, my filling, evenly throughout the shape of my dough so that everything has a nice filling inside. And then once I have a nice even layer, I'm going to put my top back on, and then I'm going to finish the rest of my bunnies, and then I'm going to put them in the oven and bake. Once that's completed, I'll show you what that looks like. My Easter figollas have been baking in the oven for about a half hour. They have now a nice crisp on the bottom. They're fully cooked on top. They're really hot right now, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let them rest for a while, let them cool down and come to a nice cool temperature before I decide to start decorating them. So some of them have split a little bit, but that's okay because we are gonna be coating it with our melted chocolate. I have a variety of colors of Easter chocolate that I'm gonna melt, and then I'm gonna decorate them. So we're gonna cover up all of those little cracks that it has. But I can't wait till I can complete these. They smell fantastic. They have that nice sweet orangey scent to them, and they came out quite nice, and I'm quite satisfied at this time. So again, once they cool down, I will show you the next step in this recipe. Now that my figollas are fully cooked and they have cooled down, they have turned out quite nice. So what I'm going to do now is the fun part. I'm going to be decorating them. So right now I am melting my chocolates. I'm going to do them in a variety of colors, and then I'm going to decorate them with some candy eyeballs. I have some Easter eggs and some other kinds of candy decorations. So I'm going to be melting my white chocolate first and then my dark chocolate, and I'm going to be making the base for these bunnies. So right now we have a bowl on top of a small pot that has a bit of water in it so that we're steaming it from the bottom. And we're breaking down our chocolate and we're just going to melt it. Once this has been melted, I'm going to start with some of them, and then I'm going to go on to my dark chocolate. I'm going to finish covering the rest. I'll let them cool down, and then I'll be able to start creating more of a character look on top of the figollas. Normally I've used icing sugar. This time I wanted to try something different, so I'm going to be doing assortments of chocolate. So I also have some yellow chocolate, blue, and some pink that I can decorate the figollas with. So once the chocolate is melted, I'll show you how I'm going to be putting it onto my figollas. Now that my white chocolate is all melted, I'm going to switch my chocolates. I'm going to put my dark chocolate on. I'm going to keep it at a low heat so that it's not going to cook too fast. And now I'm going to start working with my melted white chocolate. So as I said earlier, I'm going to be putting some of the white chocolate on some of the bunnies as a base, and then I'm going to use the chocolate on the others. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gradually add my chocolate to the top of the figolla. And then I'm just going to make sure it has a nice even balance throughout the whole upper base. And then I'm just going to continue brushing it on. Once I finish the layer of chocolate, I'm going to let it cool down, and then I'm going to decorate it in other colors. So I'm just going to continue adding my chocolate. And as I said earlier on, when I finished baking the figollas, how some of them cracked, but it's okay. You see how we're covering it now with the chocolate? It's covering all those cracks up. So we're just going to continue adding a nice layer, and there we go. So this step of the recipe is done. I'm going to let this cool down, and then we're going to decorate it. So I'll do a couple in the white chocolate, and then I'll do a couple in our dark chocolate. Now that I've completed with my first layer of my white chocolate figollas, I'm going to now create some with some dark chocolate. So I've melted my dark chocolate. Now it's a nice, soft, smooth texture. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to cover the entire top of the figolla with some chocolate. Once all of my figollas are cooled down with the chocolate on top, I'm going to be decorating them. I'm going to keep them a little simple. I'm just going to add a bit of color onto the ear section, the feet. I bought some candy eyeballs so we can put some character eyes on these and have a lot of fun with it. So I'm just going to continue with the dark chocolate covering the entire layer. Once I've completed this and they all have cooled down, I will show you what the next step in this recipe will be. Once my chocolate cooled down on the base of the figollas, what I did is I started to decorate it with the other color of chocolates. So I melted them down the same way I melted the white chocolate and the dark chocolate, and then I decorated them as bunny rabbits. So I have done the white chocolate with some pink, and I also put some candy eyeballs, and then I finished it off with a nice little Easter egg. If you like this recipe and you want to see more like this, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that share, like, and that bell notification, and I will be putting the ingredients that went into this recipe in the description.